My name is Suzanne Ivaldi, 749 Southwest Aruba Bay, Port St. Lucie West, which will be one of the areas impacted by your decisions. I wish to thank you and urge you, please do not give up your vested elected authority, vested in you by the voters of this county. If you pass the 750 resolution, you will be putting our homes and your vested elected authority in the hands of unelected bureaucrats, mainly selected from large urban areas that are unrepresentative of our special area. Before the meeting in August, I heard Mr. Zadowski say he had already made up his mind and that he was voting for 750. I'm very discouraged about that, and I wish to urge you all, please do not have a closed mind. In the parlance of political reporters, that's called handled before table. Please do not handle this very vital issue before table, and listen to all of these sincere, earnest homeowners and voters and citizens of our area who wish you to represent them fairly, and listen to what they say. Don't put your vested elected authority in the hands of unelected, unfeeling, uncaring bureaucrats. You heard the example of the sand being taken down to Miami. That's just a small microcosm of what will be done here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ivaldi.
And Mr. Chairman, before we go on, to clarify the record, I did not say that I was going to vote for anything. I did say that I wanted to hear the message of what was being presented. We have not been set a plan. We have not been given a resolution to even consider. So, to clarify the record, no, you can't. To clarify the record, I'm sitting at the table and I'm going to listen to the facts. That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. I heard you say it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I love the tie and the blue. I'm a Gator mom 2 times over.
No. You're making me feel guilty tonight about not having on Gator colors and for feeling like I'm a volunteer. I'll take.
My name is Stephanie Austin, 6250 Arrowhead Lane, Vero Beach, and I am, along with Phyllis Fry, a co-founding member of American Coalition for Property Rights. This is not my county, but this is my country. And I will be giving you tonight, after my speech, a press release from Pacific Legal Foundation that has field offices from Florida to California, and they are suing the Plan Bay area on behalf of 9 counties surrounding San Francisco. When the St. Lucie County Commission signed the Memorandum of Understanding with 750 back in April of 2010, you may not have known what lay ahead, but you do now. For weeks, your constituents have presented you with the facts based upon research, and over these weeks, you have become educated about the objectives of regionalism. Should you continue your present course, unchecked, your decisions will affect every man, woman, and child in St. Lucie County, and not for the better. To review, 750 means control of 7 counties within 50 years. If allowed to continue, 750 will affect the lives of 6 million people whose living spaces will be socially re-engineered against their will. 750, funded by HUD, has shown in their Social Equity Analysis and Opportunity Index for the 7 counties of Southeast Florida that it is on the fast track toward making this a reality, targeting every neighborhood in St. Lucie County. And Martin County, are you listening? Same for the entire 7-county region. As stated by Secretary of HUD's Sean Donovan in his August press release, and I quote, "During the months ahead in the most ambitious social re-engineering project ever taken by the federal government, racial mapping in every neighborhood and every community in the United States will begin," end quote. The current administration, backed up by Donovan's statement, I quote, "We plan to overcome all legal barriers in order to install sustainable communities." Think about that, bypassing all legal barriers in every community. The analysis report that targets every neighborhood and every community in St. Lucie County will indeed affect us all. HUD, high-density population, high rises with demographic quotas are what we will expect. 750 is equally as proud of its motto that it displays on its big screens: regionalism, one neighborhood at a time. This is not about social equity. It is about the forced relocation of mass population against our will. It is about the nationalization, indeed the federalization, of our living spaces. It is about the vilification of private property rights. It is about the depopulation of privately owned homes through extreme taxes to pay for the population of sustainable communities. It is about the taking away of our automobiles under stricter EPA guidelines. It is about forcing us to walk or take mass transit. It is about denying us the right to use, and I quote, our selfish, individually controlled air conditioners, our irrigated lawns, our cars with their dirty carbon footprints. Yes, this is 750's vision for how they think we should live. They are going to do this, they hope, without our knowledge, without our consent, without our vote, but with our tax dollars. You are going to stand by and let this happen? Are you going to lay the groundwork for 750? No one wants this once they learn what it really is. History is prologue. Let me give you a history lesson from Westchester County, New York, where this has already been tried and failed. Westchester is your preview of what is about to happen in St. Lucie County. In 2009, statistics showed that Westchester County was the fourth most diverse county in the state of New York, tied with Manhattan. The right of all people in Westchester County was to buy any home they could afford. There was no place for discrimination. Nevertheless, HUD sued Westchester, claiming that it never submitted a report demonstrating whether race was a factor in housing opportunities. Conclusion: no wrongdoing was ever found. And yet, under HUD's bullying, Westchester still agreed to build 750 low-income housing units in 31 communities. This message will continue with Phyllis Fry. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. The dispute, Phyllis Fry, American Coalition for Property Rights, 275 Date Palm Road in Vero Beach. The dispute in Westchester was never about discrimination. It was about the fundamental right of the cities, towns, and villages to plan and zone for themselves. This right is guaranteed under the Constitution of the State of New York and Home Rule, just as it is in the state of Florida. Yet HUD thinks it can trample on us because it has the misguided notion that zoning and discrimination is the same thing. It is not. Zoning restricts what can be built, not who lives there. But once locally elected officials sign on to these regional agreements with the facilitators such as 750, it is never enough. New demands were placed on Westchester 2 years later. HUD wanted no restrictions in any neighborhood on height, size, acreage, density, or bedrooms, despite the lack of water and sewers. HUD went so far as to attack single-family homes located on quarter-acre lots as restrictive zoning practices that, in HUD's view, could be discriminatory. The federal government is now trying to force Westchester's locally elected officials to sue each municipality to abolish existing zoning laws. This is bizarre. Think about what is at stake. Like many of you here in St. Lucie County, you live in a modest home on a quarter-acre lot, and your home is your biggest investment. It is part of the American dream, which most of us means working hard, paying our taxes and paying off a mortgage. What do federally enforced zoning restriction changes mean for local property owners? It means the neighborhood you live in today could rapidly change, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you stop it now. Think about the plummeting property values and simultaneously skyrocketing property taxes. 750 has a very different vision for how they think you should live. In Westchester County, for example, their area was called the Grand Experiment. What that really means is unelected bureaucrats from outside your area wanting power to determine the future development of how and where you live. And bear in mind that with organizations like 750, new demands from HUD never stop. Within 2 years, HUD sent Westchester County a letter stating that the original 750 units they demanded were not enough. Their new target, 10,768 low-income units, 15 times the original settlement amount. Now let's put a dollar perspective on this. The cost on 750 units was $12 million. The cost for 10,768 units would have been about $700 million to $1 billion. And in order to cover those costs, Westchester would have to raise property taxes 200%. And that's just county taxes. By the way, Westchester zoning was never proved exclusionary based upon race. The biggest impediment was based upon economics. People live where they choose to live and where they can afford to live, but HUD was never satisfied. It comes down to this. 750 thinks St. Lucie County is part of the grand experiment, that it can strip away the people's constitutionally protected rights and can dismantle local zoning and gut their right to local control of their land, their property, their resources. I say St. Lucie County is not a test tube. I say St. Lucie residents should not have to stop being American citizens and lose their right to decide how and where to live, or to have a say in the future development of their neighborhoods. The people of St. Lucie County have a right to expect their locally elected officials to provide representative government, which is what you took an oath to do, not a duty, not an option, a duty. They know that their publicly elected officials do not have the right to allow for plans under 750 that violate the rights of the people. The Constitution is very clear on this. Your constituents are asking you to withdraw from 750. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mark Gotts, 154 Northwest Magnolia Lakes Boulevard. Following on the two previous speakers, to see what Westchester had to say and explain this particular HUD intrusion into their sovereignty, you can go to our website, which is ac4pr.org. If you go there, go into the video section, and about the third or fourth item down will be the Westchester video of their county executive, Robert Astorino, basically speaking to his constituency about the Westchester situation, how it started, and where it's going, which is probably a lawsuit. It is hard to understand how we can sit back and let the federal government come down into our areas and take our sovereignty. Decisions will be made by faceless bureaucrats in Washington as to how our neighborhoods are going to look here in St. Lucie County. This has already been started by President noticing about 2 weeks ago, and HUD following up with a blueprint of every community in the United States. Well, these blueprints have already started, and St. Lucie County has already been identified. And the areas of Hutchinson Island, North and South, PGA, and St. Lucie West are looked at as high opportunity areas for them to bring on this plan of action, which has already been undergone in Westchester County for the last 3 years. So by viewing the Westchester video, it will give you the opportunity to see what's coming towards us here in St. Lucie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gotts. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Moeller. I live at 5217 Northwest Iredell Street in Port St. Lucie. And I guess, as you already can tell, I'm against 750. It's my 7th time here, so hope y'all are getting the message here. During the 750 conference in June that I attended, a fundamental point they constantly kept referring back to was the rising sea levels. Their plan is based on a worst-case scenario and predicts that sea levels will rise 6.5 feet. Based on the rise of sea levels, roads in Monroe, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties will have to be raised. The barrier islands will be gone, and the Everglades will be taken over and become part of the Gulf of Mexico. That's on their chart they show up on the, they put up on the Dream Watch. I found this to be very unbelievable. I have lived in South Florida since January 1967 and in St. Lucie County since 1974. During the 46 years I have lived in South Florida, The shoreline and beaches have not moved. They are still in the same place. Through my own research, I found that the UN's final report on sea level rise indicates that if the entire world's ice were to melt, the sea level rise would just be over 2 feet. The source of the Earth's climate change is the sun. Our sun is responsible for 95% of the Earth's climate. The sun's energy output goes through cycles. We have left a solar maximum energy period and have entered a period of solar hibernation called the Dalton minimum. This energy minimum period occurs every 206 years. For the next 30 to 40 years, the Earth's temperature will be declining. Evidence conclusively shows global warming has ended and a new and potentially dangerous cold climate has begun. This has been confirmed by NASA, NOAA, the U.S. Naval Solar Observatory, and the U.S. Air Force. The UN now reports Antarctica is too cold to lose glacial ice and is growing, as are the mountain glaciers around the world. Ice packs are increasing, the sea levels are getting cooler. As we all know, warm water expands, cool water contracts. The future of sea levels will be declining, not rising. In college, which was a really long time ago, I learned that belief is stronger than truth. The planners of 750 want us to believe that global warming, rising sea levels, they want us to believe in global warming and ignore the actual facts. 750 is using sea level and climate change as a tool to force us by their standards, to force us to live by their standards. Their vision of the future is accepted as policy, and for them there is no debate. At the June conference, I asked if there was any scenario where sea levels either stayed the same or decreased. The answer was no. It was inconceivable to the 750 planners that this could happen. 750 is based on bad science and not reality. The 750 plan is really about politics and controlling our lives. Because the 750 fundamental premise is so flawed, St. Lucie County must reject their plan and get as far away from it as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Charles Grandy speaking with the Rivers Coalition. 3 brief items tonight. First, I wanted to publicly thank Don West for attending our fundraiser on Hutchinson Island over the weekend. We appreciate his interest in preserving our waterways, and we really welcome his support. Second, now that Indian River County has joined Martin in passing a fertilizer ordinance that may actually help with our water quality problems, I wanted to suggest this commission may want to ask the Environmental Resources Director to review both of those ordinances, selecting the best from each, and bring back an ordinance for your review that will actually help with those problems. The last thing tonight is it was really good to see finally the AECOM report. I think it's important to point out that there are 3 levels of actions suggested, each of which is a different priority. First, there's a short list of projects as suggested by Don West that should be made eligible for state funding as soon as possible. That requires a simple, non-controversial amendment that can be done rather quickly. Second, there's a recommendation to hire a port director jointly funded with the city. I might suggest that you might ask Larry Pelton to become involved in that hiring, as that business development seems to be his strong point. The last and least important would be any changes to the existing port master plan that might actually be substantive changes to the existing recommended land uses. As there are no developers now coming forward with potential site plans, and no one talking with the landowners at this point. Any changes proposed now will probably be moot anyway, as the eventual development proposal or proposals will surely call for comp plan changes anyway. Thank you.
Mr. Grundy, I'm sorry, address for the record.
9950 South Ocean Drive, Hutchinson Island.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm from Indian River County, Melinda Meikle, 1612 West Camino del Rio. I have to start with a comment, Commissioners Jadowski.
Zadowski's fine. You can be part of the family.
Thank you. I didn't realize your position on being at the table, so some of this may not apply to you.
Bring it on.
Okay.
Beat me up.
I'm not a very good cook anyway. I would like to share our successful efforts in Indian River County to remove the 750 plan that we oppose. Our observations in Indian River were that the officials who read the 750 plan quickly voted it out, saying that we want no part of this. However, there are still a few holdouts in Indian River who refuse to withdraw because they want to stay at the table. Since we've heard that buzzword repeatedly, we soon realized that staying at the table was more of a divisionary technique to help win the vote for the 750. Now that the outside monies have been given to St. Lucie by HUD, your voters are tied to the big government trough without any voter consent. And if you stay at the table, there's added incentive of more dollars in the future. A perfect example of government failure just happened when 40,000 union workers cut their ties with the AFL-CIO yesterday, learning that they were being misrepresented by government. Since our democracy is the most successful form of government on the planet, what value is the power of regionalism over our cities and our counties? We work hard to pay our taxes, and now you choose to bring unknown officials to call the shots over our property rights. In this democracy that millions have died to defend, this just can't happen in America. Freedom is in peril for generations to come with 750. Representatives who fail to hear our voices, or unelected officials with hidden agendas. When I was last here, I heard that the Army Corps of Engineers proposed to take St. Lucie County sand to Miami. Your commissioners indicated that they would highly object to this removal of your sand. If this is truly so, how can the same commission stand by and overlook the virtual hijacking of your private property? In essence, you're saying, don't take our sand, but help yourself to our land. Is this even believable? No one needs a crystal ball to see what happens under regionalism. Crowded conditions, massive poverty, failing communities, and too many disastrous examples across America to mention. Governor Scott has mandated against outside intrusion into Florida, and he asked local communities to rule accordingly. We strongly encourage St. Lucie to join Indian River to reject 750. Clearly, redistribution does not work, and the voters are depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meikle. Good evening.
Good evening. A little shorter. Janet Campbell, 188 Moccasin Trail, Jupiter, Florida. A long way, but I'm here to show my opposition to 750. As in Jupiter, I don't see any hope. I really don't. So I'm appealing to you. I'm going to take a different appeal. Please let me take you on a personal journey of home, family, and love. Each one of you live in a place you call home. A condo, a single family, 0 lot line, a single family with some acre, a single family with a lot of acres. You choose your home for a variety of reasons: work, school, hobbies, family, but mostly for the overall benefit of you and your family. Your choices include a number of bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen styles, and decorations based on your personalities. All of these choices turn structure of walls and cabinets into a home. Let's say you have planned vacation and you've asked a friend to home sit for you. You give that person your keys and happily leave on a well-earned vacation. Shortly after you leave, the person caring for your home speaks to HUD, DOT, and EPA employees, and they decide your home is not sustainable. They set out to change it. They put your TV where your kitchen was, make a bathroom into a kitchen, divide your bedroom into two, making a room for rent. All your appliances are changed into the best environmentally friendly ones, even though the ones you have are only 2 years old. They replace all your food and your beverages with ones they feel are best suited for you. They have outlined exactly what your daily routines need to be. They have billed you and attached a portion of your pay to cover the expenses. After the shock, you ask, why would you do such a thing? The answer? Your way was not sustainable. It did not provide social equity. It did not meet the racial mapping requirements. The second question, but how could you legally do this? We have been overcoming all the legal barriers for years, so do not attempt to change it. You must join with the rest of the world. You are not alone. You cannot function alone. You must be forced to accept regionalism. You can thank us later. A silly story? Look around you and listen to the people whose property rights have been taken away, whose property have been restricted by regulations, whose homes have been unduly controlled by HOAs. Look at the ordinances that think nothing about private owners' rights. Hear what the people here are trying to tell you. Listen to the facts. You are their representatives. They voted you in office to protect them and their property rights. Read the 750 plan. Read the plan from the Southeast Florida Regional Vision and Blueprint for Economical Prosperity. A silly story? No, a future. If you do not use the power the people gave you to withdraw from 750 now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sam Somley. I live at 2746 Southeast Eagle Drive in Fort St. Lucie. I was here a couple weeks ago, talked a little bit about charrettes that the 750 has been having, supposedly. And I said my wife and I are a small computer company, or a small company that specializes in data center construction support. The first thing on the agenda when we start a project is to call in all the stakeholders that have skin in the game. That would be the owners, the operators, the maintenance people, the subcontractors and the contractors that'll build it. And we get everybody's input on what their wants and needs are for the center when it's done. And when we get into the design phase, we make sure that all these needs are in there. 750 has had a series of these charrettes, but the stakeholders, which is us, 99.9% of us have never even heard of them. They had a session in West Palm Beach last June. I sat in on agricultural breakout session. They did have an orange grower there at that session. He found out that he could, since orange growing is deemed unsustainable, he could have the department or the Corps of Engineers come in and bulldoze his grove, build dikes all around it, flood it with water, and rent that water to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, because the tourist business is considered sustainable and they need the water down there. There was one of the moderator, or one of the people on the panel, was from the Port of Miami, and he said the cruise ships leave every port in Florida every day with no water on board, and they make their own. They make millions of gallons at sea, just desalinizing the seawater. The rest of the panel completely ignored him as if he wasn't even there, because that was not on their agenda. Claiming land was their agenda, not making seawater. So considering the track record of the Corps of Engineers, I asked the group what would be the plan to back out of this thing if it didn't work out. You know, it could be another Kissimmee waterway that didn't work out, and this would be another one just like it. They said, well, that the lease with the farmer was for 10 years, and at the end of the 10 years he could opt out. Well, okay. In California, in San Diego, in the eastern part of the county, the developers, landowners, and the Bureau of Fish and Wildlife created no surprises easement on their property to determine how they would divvy up the property for development and for conservation. And they entered into a 50-year easement to do that. The plan worked for a while, and then Earth Justice, which used to be called Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, sued because they were not taking proper care of 7 vernal entities, which was 2 of them were fairy shrimp and 5 of them were plants. They won. They won. They got that thrown out. While Fish and Wildlife had the 50-year easement, they're holding the easement, and the farmers or the developers are holding the bag. So, in Florida, with this 10-year water farm, EPA could come in and say, well, that's a wetlands now. You can't do anything with it because it's a wetlands. Or they could say some unknown species that we don't even know about has now taken up habitat there, so they cannot change, they cannot interfere with that new species, whatever it is. And so now the farmer, the water farmer, at the end of the 10 years, he doesn't really have any rights to his land. He can't do anything with it because EPA has locked it up. Well, now Miami and Fort Lauderdale know that, so they say, we're not going to pay you near as much for your water as we have been. This next year 10-year plan is going to be a lot lower rate.
Mr. Somley, the time is finished.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But we have no high ground between here and there, and we ask that you use the moral high ground to vote them out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Lattimore, resident of Port St. Lucie, 2152 Southwest Madruga Street. First thing I want to bring up is there's 2 events here in St. Lucie County concerning the 9/11 memorial. One is at IRSC, and the other one is in the city of Port St. Lucie at the Civic Center, and both start at 8:30. So it's next Wednesday. If those who are able to, I would encourage them to attend to not forget what happened on that day. It's been a few years, but it's a significant event that happened here in our country. The second item of concern is the Port of Fort Pierce. I've read in the paper about the possibility of creating an independent Port Authority manager. I think that's something that both the St. Lucie County and the City of Fort Pierce should do, and possibly jointly fund it, and have this individual do the total management of the property, and whatever zoning and whatever issues, let it be funded, let it be channeled through him. So if you're a developer or whatever, you have one person to contact. Instead of dealing with multiple agencies and multiple groups, you could go to him or her, whoever the designated person would be. That one person would then refer whatever information was to the appropriate agency, and they could get back through that person. So the developer, or if they want to build a hotel, whatever the issue is, that they would have just one person to contact, and then if something needed to be resolved, that person would get back through that agency and allow him or her to have the staff needed to deal with that issue. And I think it's very critical, because I think most other cities in the state of Florida have a Port Authority person. I think the Port of Fort Pierce has one. I think the Port of Miami does, and I'm not real familiar with the Port of Palm Beach, but I would think they also have one, and the other ports here in the state of Florida. And I think also increasing the depth of the channel for the boats would be good. And as I've gone to previous meetings, using the smaller ships or cargo vehicles, I think is appropriate for this port. There may be certain shippers that don't need large, and maybe the commodities he's shipping, possibly electronics or certain items, is more suitable for the smaller things as opposed to cars and stuff that might be going through the larger ports, or containerized type ships or barges or whatever type of vehicle they use. The third concern of mine is the water flow from Lake Okeechobee. I think it is critical that they work on resolving the water and getting it flow to the south instead of to the east or the west. Obviously, what I saw done in Sewell's Point, I was working there for a period of time, and what has done to the water there, the matter of fact, I talked with the Martin County health person who put up the sign. I was on break when he showed up, talked to him for a couple minutes, and he says, it has been this bad before, and it was really terrible looking. And there's a warning not for anyone to swim in that water in Sewell's Point there in the park, right off of Ocean Avenue, Sewell's Point Road. And last time I was in that area, looked at the water, it still didn't look good. So, and the signs are still up about it being hazardous to use the water. The fourth issue that I want is, I would hope the county and whatever agencies to help get the Crosstown Parkway completed as soon as possible. Right now, I think the completion date is tentatively 2018. I think it needs to get to US 1. It's a benefit now to Floresta, but it is greatly needed all the way to US 1. And then the last point that I want to bring up, I am in favor of not having the 750 plan implemented in this area. I think that particular thing would put more government control over our properties. I currently like my half-acre lot, and I would like to possibly build a new home on my adjacent half-acre lot at some point in the future. And matter of fact, I would like less restrictions from all government agencies, that I could even build a log cabin on that lot if my wife would let me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dave Griffin. I live at 1981 Southeast Mandrake Circle in Port St. Lucie. This is my first time here. 750 is an enormous Trojan horse. They make it sound good, but they simply are not telling the vast amount of what it will mean in the future. I attended the 750 Summit in June at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. The video there showed nice little hubs where people would live near rail transit stations in apartments about 4 or 5 stories tall. They also showed a jungle of high-rises in China and said, we are not doing this. But they are simply not telling the truth. It doesn't take a very smart person to realize that they are not going to fit everyone in 4-story apartments and little hubs. It's going to have to be high-rises, and the regional unelected planners will dictate who your neighbors will be, no matter who they are or what their income. This would be a fantastic way to assimilate newly freed aliens around the country. In Seattle, they're building micro apartments of about 200 square feet. The Seattle Times found a lady who is single that likes it. If you're single or a college student, that's not so bad. But commissioners, she shares a kitchen with up to 7 other people. Can you imagine that? I have 4 people in my house. I'm handy, so I have tools, and I have things. I like to fix things when they break. I need space for this. People have hobbies. They do, and this requires space. a lot more than 200 square feet. PGA Village and Country Club has been targeted by 750 for building a sustainable community, which is a cluster of low-income, HUD, high-density population stack and pack high-rises with demographic quotas. When people move into a gated community, they move there for the HOA and the security guard. They like that. These 750 changes will be done without their vote or their permission. This is absolute tyranny by the federal government. I chose to live in St. Lucie County in a single-family home, and I like it the same as most people in this county. We like our land, our cars, our grass, and our space. These changes won't happen overnight. What they want is the frog in the cooking pot effect. They'll raise home taxes so homes will be unaffordable. They'll need the extra money to finance 750. They'll put a moratorium on home building. When you need repairs on your home, they won't issue a permit for it. Eventually, they will restrict the selling of homes. You need a place to live? Okay, well, that's what the new stack and pack high-rises are for. You county commissioners are our elected officials, and it is your duty to vote in our interest. After implementation, 750 will take that option away from you. All you'll be able to do is rubber stamp what unelected officials decide. We, the residents, would not give up our property rights, but they are about to be taken away from us without our vote and with our tax dollars. You need to vote this down now. This is our only chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. You know, I have to say, I find myself trying to remember what it must be like or feel like to speak before a group like this for the very first time, so I'm sure that's a challenge as well to do that. So thank you for taking the time. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's still exciting after all these times.
Still exciting.
Yeah. My name is Mary Burton, and I reside at 5209 Silver Oak Drive in Fort Pierce. And I am here to talk about 750. I'm against it. I have to tell you personally, after reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of comprehensive economic development, social equity, my eyes want to bleed. But what I think is it's the biggest Ponzi scheme that anyone has ever seen. Sustainable development means whatever they want it to mean. Sustainable means creating geographies of opportunity. Okay. Another thing I find with 750 that is simply amazing is the secrecy surrounding it. We have a plan that isn't a plan. No one's seen a plan. No one in the county has even heard of it. American Coalition for Property Rights has made it our goal to let as many people know about 750 as possible. I would hope that you, as a commission, would let the people know, your people, the people who voted for you. Let them know what's coming. Let them know what's happening to them. They're depending on you. I would just, out of curiosity, like everyone here who's here for 750, to raise their hand. We've been trying to get everyone, as many people as we can, to find out about this plan so we can defend ourselves against it. And we're looking for your help. We love this community, and that's what we're here about. We want to retain our sovereignty. We want to retain our voice in our community. We want to retain you. We don't know who will be making decisions for us in the future. If 750 gets adopted in St. Lucie County, according to Andre Duanis, who I know you're all familiar with, cities and counties will no longer be important. The decisions will be made by a few, and then they'll download it to everyone else when they feel you need to know the information. And just so I have it right, let me see. Mr. Dewani said that cities are on the bottom, then the county, then 750, then the state, then the federal government, and then the UN. Isn't that great? That now our sovereignty is going to be given over to the United Nations. People really need to know what this plan means. So I'm here to ask you to retain our sovereignty. We want to remain a free people. We do not want equitable solutions because we don't know whose idea is equitable. What does that mean? Does that mean I can get your house? Do I get to determine what's equitable? Who gets to make those determinations? We don't know. They do zip code. They're saying now that opportunity depends on what zip code you're born in. However, most people who live here were not born in the zip code that they now reside in. The only thing that God gives us, we're all born equal, is opportunity. And where you end up in your zip code is what you do with your God-given talents. So I'm asking you to please protect us from these insidious plans that are heading our way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Good evening.
Hello, here I am again. Probably getting sick of looking at me, huh? As well as everybody else. Give us what we want, we'll go away.
Pack a lunch.
We promise.
Okay. All right, 750, social engineering.
I'm sorry, name and address, obviously.
Name and address. Oh, I thought you already had that. All right. Matthew Renson, 2833 Southeast Peru Street, Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Renson.
Okay, 750, social engineering, destroying American one neighborhood at a time. Can't happen here, it's already happening. 750, meaning control over 7 counties, 50 years, seeks to implement its master plan for building sustainable communities in St. Lucie County, clusters of government-owned, low-income, HUD, high-density, stack and pack, high-rises with demographic quotas built without garages, located adjacent to mass transit. Sounds great. In last week's press release, Sean Donovan, Secretary of HUD, stated, during the months ahead, in the most ambitious social engineering project ever undertaken by the federal government, racial mapping of every neighborhood and every community in the United States will begin. Funded by HUD, 750 targeted St. Lucie County in their Social Equity Analysis and Opportunity Index, which states on page 30, downtown Fort Pierce is very weak in social equity. On other land tract, number 3821.9, PGA Village is high on our opportunity census study. Another tract, 3812.04, covers a barrier island with 3 state parks, which are deficient in social justice planning, just as every gated community in St. Lucie County is. Okay. The 750 plan is not about social justice. It is about forced relocation of populations against our will, the vilification of private property rights, the mass redistribution of wealth, taxing private homes in an extreme way to pay for the sustainable communities, and the federalization of our living spaces. It is about entire communities being forced out of our homes into upward sprawl, out of our cars into mass transit. It is a plan so good it requires the full force of the federal government to inflict it on us. It's implemented by hope without our knowledge, without our consent, without our vote, but with our tax dollars. Implemented, they hope, without our knowledge, not with hope. Okay. And you can visit our website at ac4pr.org. I also want to say something about economics. Just as this is based on bad science, it's also based on bad economics, too. The idea that you can take people and move them somewhere else and have them more productive is insane. It's not going to happen. There are other reasons more complex than that, and that has to do with home life and education, the willingness to work, and hard study to create a better life. And that's where we should be focusing on, and not this redistribution of individuals and wealth. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renson. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rodica Novak, R-O-D-I-C-A Novak, N-O-V-A-K. I live in 42nd North A1A4 Pierce 34949 in a beautiful state of Florida. I have come a long way from my origins in Romania, where I live under communist regime. My people were slaves under the dictatorial state of Ceausescu. As some of you know, he was finally executed along with his wife by the people of Romania for his crime against the people. I was fortunate enough to be accepted by the United States as a political refugee, and after months of waiting, boarded a plane in Italy bound for America. I arrived in America on 25th of July 1980, Kennedy Airport. I am a legal refugee from Romania. I receive $150, social security number, welcome to America. The next day, go to work. 5 years later, I received my American citizenship on what was the happiest and proudest day of my life. I am here now to tell you that as a concerned citizen of the greatest country on earth, I am opposed the 750 plan that can only result in the loss of our private property rights guaranteed by our Constitution. 750 is not an American plan. It is the device of the United Nations, a part of Agenda 21, to redistribute the wealth of the United States throughout the world in the scheme of the New World Order. This project is pure communist, Marxist, taking from those who have worked for what they have to give to those who have not, for whatever reason. This is not something new, no. It was used in 1917 after the Russian Bolshevik Revolution, and they were calling kolkhoz, and it failed. Who among you have lived in one room with the entire family, share a kitchen, and in a basement with all the other tenants of the building, or share a toilet and tiny shower at the end of the long hallway with everyone else who lived there? I'm sorry. I am certain none of you have, yet you are about to look at the stock and pack plans presented to you. Ignore the fact that this is all about control of the population sorry, and destroy the sovereignty of the United States, while rewarding a few who are in for the money and stand to reap fortunate of the backs of those who will lose everything. I have worked for all I have. I came here to be an American, not a Romanian living in America. The people who came here fleeing communism came here to be free. Free does not mean being told where to live, what means of transportation to use, what I can or I cannot eat, and even whatever or not I can have a dog or water my lawn or take a vacation wherever I'm able to. The Founding Fathers gave us the best government in the world based on the premises that we were free to use the opportunity provided by American freedom to better our life. I did not come here to lose my freedom a few years after I found it because of the United Nations wants to control the world. I beg you, and please get out 750 and save America. Do not take my future back to my past and destroy my freedom. Do not destroy us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Novak. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. It's a little short. My name is Dickie Brooks, and I live at 924 Jackson Way in Fort Pierce. I actually came to speak on an agenda item that's coming up in your regular agenda, which will be the wetland waiver and major site plan approval for Marisol. Thought it was going to be a public hearing. Since it's not going to be a public hearing, I still have my 2 cents worth, so I just couldn't bear not to put it in. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. I would just like to let you know that I support the Planning Division staff's recommendation to deny the wetlands waiver for this project. We in St. Lucie County are very proud of the thought and effort and collaboration that have gone into the development of our comprehensive plan. It represents a solid commitment to support economic development while preserving our most treasured natural resources. I feel it is incumbent upon anyone seeking to benefit economically from our extraordinary natural resources to respect and abide by the rules which have been laid down to protect those very resources. There are no small exceptions or deviations, especially when our fragile barrier island is involved. Therefore, I urge that the Commission deny this waiver and encourage the Marisol developers to either comply with the Planning Development staff's recommendations or come up with an acceptable alternative that does not involve development in protected wetlands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Thelma Como, and I live at 2746 Southeast Eagle Drive. 2 weeks ago, I spoke to you about the historic black community called Overtown and how the routing of I-95 through its heart devastated it. Tonight, I wish to conclude that presentation. There are bright spots because the community has finally started doing the cleanup and the building themselves. The Lyric Theater has been restored and placed on the National Register of Historic Places. 2 churches have created community development corporations and have started the rebuilding process, and the community is starting to find its voice and demand a vote on the manner in which public funds are spent. Blog spots and YouTube films are sprouting up all over the internet, bringing attention to the misuse of funds collected in their name. Overtown will eventually recover, but it will be by the will and work of its people, not because of planners or redevelopers or their own elected officials. I-95 also affected Port St. Lucie. It was deliberately routed far west and now runs right through our community. We grew towards I-95 with the promise of the real estate building boom, but the economy was never taken into consideration, and now we are paying for improvements that hopefully will someday bring the home builders back. Ask Mr. Michael Busha about it, as he discussed the situation on an NPR presentation about I-95. There are other similar stories of government abuse. An excellent sample is Brooklyn's Atlantic Yards project, the New Jersey Nets Arena, and the vision that became the Barclays Center. Frank Gehry, another legendary architect, prepared the redevelopment plan that placed the arena and 16 skyscrapers where the 5 boroughs come together. Unfortunately, there was already a community in the selected location, a small neighborhood in Prospect Heights. The film, The Battle for Brooklyn, documents the 8-year battle to save the community. Leading the fight were residents and local council members. But in the end, the largest redevelopment project in the state of New York history was completed without a single vote being cast by an elected official. I wish to repeat that. The largest redevelopment project in the state of New York history was completed without a single vote being cast by an elected official. Unelected bureaucrats made the decisions that built the arena and left the rest of the community a barren, empty space. Once again, the economy had stepped in and ended the dream for the great buildings. Promised homes and jobs evaporated as much as most such visions do. I recommend you Google the Battle for Brooklyn film. There it is. For links to the trailer and additional information on this story. My firm is a member of the United States Green Building Council. You cannot have only engineering firms, construction firms, only companies can be members of the United States Green Building Council. I believe in energy conservation. I have commissioned LEED buildings. I am an ASHRAE Life member and have earned ASHRAE Energy Award for my designs. So I know whereof I speak when I say that 750 is not the sustainable future we want Dover Coal and Partners to plan for our community, because its premise is totally unsustainable. I will close by returning to Overtown and quoting the following comment from the Wednesday, February 24, 2010, Real Redevelopment blog spot. Quote, "Elected officials, are you listening? Please help save these historic and Black-owned properties from the redevelopment machine and respect the wishes of the community, not the big developers, as has been the case too often in the past. We can't count on you to do the right thing." Close quote. I can only paraphrase their plea and ask that you too respect the wishes of the people that elected you to your posts as guardians of our community's well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity for me to voice my opinion tonight. My name is Jerry Bullock, and I live at 3120 North Highway A1A on North Hutchinson Island. This evening, I want to talk to you about statistics. Last week, I really read, the two documents drafted for 750 per HUD requirements as a condition of grant monies. Both documents were written by the Cares Community Investment, a 750 consulting firm. I found both documents on the 750 website. The first one was the Regional Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing. It was called Part 1. It was 149 pages of statistics on owning or renting homes, commute patterns, getting a loan in each of the 7 counties, and loan discrimination. Their statistics were culled from census documents and the American Community Survey of 2004 to 2010. All of these statistics were expressed in terms of race and ethnicity. The second document is the Social Analysis and Opportunity Index for the 7 counties of South Florida. That's called Part 2, and I can't wait to find Part 3. That was 37 pages and lots of statistics about the populations that live in each county. The data comes from census documents, the American Community Surveys, HUD, the Florida Department of Education, and the Reinvestment Fund. I'm going to give you just a brief list, not all of them, of some of the statistics that they quoted. First, there were race demographics and per capita income, and percent of people unemployed, and years of schooling completed, percentage of students receiving subsidized lunches in schools, households with persons 65 years of age or older, the percent of renting or owning households spending 30% or more on rent, the proximity of households to a supermarket, gather that one, the percent of commuters who drive or carpool or walk or take public transit. By the way, they figured out that it takes longer to get where you're going on public transportation than if you get in a car. That was one of those statements, you know, I thought I knew that one. Nothing in these statistics spoke of jobs in the area, or the availability of public transit, or county resources, or individual values. Under the guise of regionalism and free money, the grants made of our tax dollars, HUD has authorized this gathering of statistics about each and every one of us and where we live. But statistics are numbers. They're averages and percentages across large numbers. You can make numbers say anything you want them to say. They're not people. They're not friends and neighbors and voters. They don't express the wishes of your people. They don't determine our success or our standard of living. But with these numbers, HUD intends to force the re-engineering of South Florida and every other county across the country. I join my voice with all of my friends and colleagues here tonight and urge you to withdraw from 750. This is not the path to prosperity for the people of St. Lucie County. Thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gwen Morris. I live at 1720 Timberlake in St. Lucie County, and I'm not here to talk about 750. If it's any worse than eminent domain, I've had a bit of property I couldn't use the way I wanted to because of EPA. But I'm not here for 750, okay? But I guess one thing that is very clear to me is sometimes you don't understand a situation until it personally affects you or your loved ones or someone you know. So I think compassion, empathy is important in all situations. So that's just my first line. I am a bit disappointed that the meeting on the port, which happened this week with Mr. Widener, was not done for television. I think it was a very important meeting for the entire community because the port affects Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie. It can affect the entire region. So everyone in St. Lucie County and in the surrounding area will and could be affected by the development of the port. So I really wish that it had been televised, and I don't know why it wasn't, because I think it would have been important information that for the entire community. Also, I want to thank you, Commissioners, for moving forward with Phase 2. And I'd like to urge you not to just leave it to gather dust on the shelves, because people's lives are at stake. And until you've been there, you really don't understand unless you have that compassion and empathy. And developing the Port of Fort Pierce is already a very divisive situation in our community. And as the good leaders that I know you are, I think it's very important that we start having collaboration. And as commissioners, you try to develop consensus among your constituents so that we can have a plan developed on paper that we can move forward on, and not just piecemeal things as we think this will satisfy the community for a minute, and not be willing as leaders to do the hard things, the things that the community might not agree on. I would hope that as leaders you can bring the community together and get some consensus. That's what good leaders do, and I know that's what you are. I also am just a little bit disappointed in calling out the longshoremen as being the reason this is happening, or perhaps they'll benefit, because I think by doing that, that might be just a bit divisive. because it's not about the longshoremen. I hope the longshoremen are able to benefit from the development of the Port of Fort Pierce, because as you know, for years they have to travel to Cocoa, and a lot of the longshoremen fathers and sons kind of look forward to having a decent, good-paying job to support their family, which labor does, and Labor Day was just this week, right? And it seems to be like a war on unions. I'm a union person myself. I know a lot of people got ahead, a lot of families got ahead with unions. So I'm not anti-union. I'm for good jobs that support good families and help education. I'm for people. That's what I'm for. And I would just ask the commissioners to not just make this a Fort Pierce issue or a longshoreman issue that might become divisive. This is a Port St. Lucie issue. It's a St. Lucie County issue. And it spreads beyond St. Lucie County, so please think of it as such. Please don't put the document on the shelf and let it sit there. We need good jobs in St. Lucie County, and we need them now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Ms. Outlaw, staff. I'm Richard Silvestri, 5708 Buchanan Drive, unincorporated Fort Pierce. I want to read to you some quotes from some things I've been reading. More than 80% of the world's staghorn coral population has disappeared in just 30 years due to disease, climate change, and human-related factors. Another quote, the staghorn coral used to be one of the dominant reef builders in the Florida Reef Tract. Coral research and restoration studies are deepening our understanding of how numerous factors, many rooted in human activities such as overfishing, burning of fossil fuels, affect the health of coral reefs in Florida and about the world. More quote, lots of coral biologists are making predictions about what's going to happen in 100 years. They're basing that on experiments where one variable has been manipulated, temperature, and more recently, pH. Now, pH, the higher the pH, the more basic, the more lye type, and the lower the pH, more acidic. We know, and we've heard, and I know because I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, that the carbon dioxide in the air is raising world temperatures, and it also dissolves in the ocean, is lowering the pH that is making the oceans more acidic. Now, what I just read you was not written by Al Gore or President Obama. It comes from Miami, the University of Miami Magazine, summer of 2013 issue, pages 22 to 25 if you care to look it up and see if I'm lying. I'll read you some other quotes for another publication. A profoundly altered planet is what our fossil fuel-driven civilization is creating. We have irreversibly committed future generations to a hotter world and rising seas. In May, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere reached 400 parts per million. Now, I might add that scientists were saying that once it reached 350 parts per million, the damage is probably irreversible. We're at 400 and counting. Coastal cities face a twofold threat. Consistently rising oceans will gradually inundate low-lying areas, and higher seas will extend the ruinous reach of storm surges. Among the most vulnerable is Miami. And here's a quote within the quote from one of the scientists. I'm not going to bore you, but I can get it for you. I cannot envision southeastern Florida having many people at the end of the century. With seas 4 feet higher than they are today, a distinct possibility by 2100, about 2/3 of southeast Florida is inundated. Sea level rise has already begun to threaten Florida's freshwater supply. About 1/4 of the state's 19 million residents depend on wells sunk into the Biscayne aquifer. Salt water is now seeping into it from dozens of canals built to drain the Everglades. Using fresh water to block the salt water will become impractical because the amount of fresh water would submerge ever larger areas behind the control structures, in effect flooding the state from the inside. With about 20 inches of sea level rise, 80% of the salinity-controlled structures in Florida will no longer be functional. When sea level rises 2 feet, he says, he being one of the scientists quoted here in the article, Florida's aquifers may be poisoned beyond recovery. Even now, during unusually high tides, seawater spurts from sewers in Miami Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and other cities flooding streets. A good friend of mine, some of you may know, is Jerry Beekler. He ran the Democratic primary for Congress. Jerry's a retired Miami Beach firefighter, has a coworker still down in Miami Beach. Every time now the coworker tells him that it rains heavy on Miami Beach, the fire department has to go out and pump out buildings and sewers and such. By the next century, I'm quoting again, if not sooner, larger numbers of people will have to abandon coastal areas in Florida and other parts of the world. Some researchers fear a flood tide of climate change refugees from the Bahamas to Bangladesh and a major amount of Florida will all have to move, and we may have to move at the same time. I'm not quoting Al Gore. I'm not quoting Bill McKibben from 350.org. I'm not quoting President Obama. I'm quoting this month's issue, September 2013, National Geographic magazine. Time is up. The front cover shows the Statue of Liberty half underwater. I think you know my point.
Thank you, Mr. Silvestri. By the way, just as a reminder, obviously various opinions are what make this country great, and we just ask that you try and remember what it's like when you're speaking and how you would hope people would treat you. I know it's tough if you have varying opinions and feelings, but we love the fact that you're able to come and present comments and provide things for us. But it's also, we want to make sure that we're as respectful as we possibly can be. Good evening.
Good evening. You getting tired of me yet?
No.
Linda Nichols Addison, 1450 Southwest Delaney Avenue, Port St. Lucie, 34953. I believe that 750 is a clear and present danger to the entire sovereignty of the United States of America. It is not, as Radhika Novak mentioned earlier, an American idea. It is a United Nations attempt to destroy our sovereignty, and I would really like to know why we were even here arguing for our Constitution, our constitutional rights as citizens of the United States of America, and why it is necessary for us to defend our position of what has and always should be the right of an American. I have lived in Europe. In my little home in the middle of France, I can't decide what color I'm going to paint my house, because my house is 200 years old. So it's the decision of the Regional Planning Commission on what color my house is going to be painted. Ultimately, I'm not going to paint it. This is regionalism. It is not your choice. I'm not going to paint it shocking pink with purple polka dots, but that choice is not mine. Here in America, why am I arguing for what has always been my right, to choose where I want to live, how I want to live, where I want to drive my car, whether or not I use diesel fuel or gasoline, all of the things that have made America great. The clear and present danger is us turning over our authority to govern ourselves to a supposed unelected authority in which we have no voice, and comes down to us as the power that be from the United Nations. I argued with someone the other day on a point of history, who accused us of being an imperialistic country. I pointed out to him when he criticized us for the decisions that were made by the League of Nations that the United States never was a member of the League of Nations. The misinformation that flies around throughout this country and throughout this world on what America really is about, it is up to us to defend to the nth degree the fact that our founding fathers did it differently and that we have been a free country for a heck of a long time, and I intend for us to stay that way. And everyone in this room that wants to fight the battle with me, you can stand up and believe it. This old lady isn't about to quit. 750 isn't going to happen.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. This is my first time also. I appreciate your easing us into that. I respectfully would like to mention something in regards to a citation the previous gentleman made before I go on about 750, and that is that the National Geographic lost much credibility a long time ago with me, but recently in the Gulf oil spill, I read that article 3 times to seek to find a single mention of the use of core exit chemicals by BP and the damages done to the people and the wildlife in the Gulf of Mexico. The greatest lie is lie of omission, and they omitted any reference to core exit in the National Geographic. At some point, a high school student, junior high school student, will use that magazine and a citation saying if it had been there, they would have mentioned it. But it's not there, and they lied by omission. I have no respect for the National Geographic. In regards to the UN, it was founded 1 year before my birthday. And I had a dear friend who passed from Agent Orange, which I call the Vietnam disease, from pancreatic cancer. And he was a Miami resident that did commercial fireworks. I mentioned something about the UN and the UN parks. The parks in America that are now delegated and run by the United Nations, all our federal parks. This was many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, and he laughed at me until he had occasion to travel and went into a park and saw managed by the UN. The UN, to paraphrase Terence McKenna, culture's not your friend, is not our friend. The 750 is the daughter, an illegitimate daughter of the UN. The Agenda 21 is coupled to this inseparably by stealth, by lies, by omissions, and it's unconstitutional. But in today's land of signing orders on presidential decrees, it doesn't mean much. However, the population still hasn't given up its position of ownership to that Constitution. It still believes that that Constitution is real, and they lean upon the people who they elected to maintain that. The sad thing is the name HUD. One only has to look a little ways to find Catherine Austin Fitts as the second in command of HUD and her computer system that she developed to find fraud, seized by the FBI for finding fraud. And and not returned to her, and she was rendered, and I'm going to use this improperly, a eunuch for the remaining period of time that she was at HUD. The use of 750 is a soft hand of what's really happening around the world. It's happening right now. It's the soft hand of what's happening in Syria. It's the soft hand of what's happened in Libya. It's the soft hand of what the geopolitical status is for some unknown global control mechanism. The 750 is socialism on steroids. 750 is communism. 750 places non-governmental organizations, NGOs, in positions of power. No accountability. Who are these people? You don't know. They're unelected. They're in positions of power. This literally borders is treason. And those that follow and support a mechanism of treason are by definition traitors. Agenda 21, the daughter, the illegitimate daughter, 750, they are treasonous. Thank you.
And just, sir, just for the record, can you provide us with your name and address as well?
I'm sorry? David Luke, 1112 Beach Court, Fort Pierce.
Luke?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Luke. Good evening.
Good evening. Paul Shaw, 6008 Birch Drive, Fort Pierce. I'd like to comment, about 6 weeks ago, I didn't know that much about the 750 issue here. I have since then seen it on TV a couple times, watching late night through these sessions, and I basically just want to state that I'm in support of all the people that are here and asking you to do the same, what they have been asking you. I'm really pleased to see that this many people are out there and coming out so strong to address you. It makes me feel good. There's a lot of people out there that don't come to these meetings, and they rely on you that the proper decisions are made and things go well. And what I've witnessed in the last 6 weeks assures me and gives me comfort, makes me feel good and comfortable that there are people out there that keep an eye on it this close on what is going on, and that are willing to stand up and fight and speak. So I feel good that there's the people behind to fight this thing. On another item, I had mentioned one person spoke about this wetland waiver here. I don't know the people. I want to speak in support of this request. The little bit I know, I don't know any of these people. I don't know the owner, the developer. I have no idea. But what came to mind here is what I have learned, that a developer is here to develop, I think, is it 130 units?
The proposal actually hasn't been presented to us at this point, so
For some reason, the number either it's 30 or 130, but I thought it's pretty impressive that the developer is coming forward to build 130 condominiums here on South Beach. I thought that's basically pretty good news in this economic climate. Somebody saying, hey, I think I like to build here. St. Lucie County is the right place. This is where I want to build and invest. I want to put in 130 units on the tax roll, support and create jobs and create new residences, and invest money in the lifestyle in St. Lucie County. So I thought that is pretty positive, you know. Being turned down for having, you know, land that is wet. We have a lot of wet land here. All around, you got land that is wet, and whatever the balance is, we have so much environmentally safe land on the island throughout this county. If there is an opportunity for somebody to build that will stimulate the economic portion of this county, I think you ought to really give it serious consideration. If you turn this around and suppose this developer or any other developer would say, you know what, I would like to come and build here 130 units or so, or 100 on the island, but you know what, I don't think I'm going to invest my money here because I don't think St. Lucie County represents the lifestyle where I want to invest or build. Apparently you got problems with the Indian River Lagoon. That thing is turning green. It's foaming. I don't think I'm going to invest money here. I'm going to go somewhere else. I wonder how angry you or how concerned you would be about that. So here's somebody that's saying, I'm willing to invest. This is the place. We put our money in here at some point. Now we're going to put some more money into it. I think it deserves some serious consideration. And again here, everybody can provide input. This is great. Obviously, if this 750 takes place, you won't have to ever deal with this again because we won't have a word. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scholl. Thanks,
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shaw, just so you know, this is going to probably come back at a later time, but you should also know it's more complicated than just a wetland. There's also a Native American burial ground on the property, so there's a lot of other issues to it. So I'd welcome you to come back and listen to the entire presentation whenever that does come back. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. My name is Roland O'Brien. Live at 21 Villa del Norte in North County in Fort Pierce. Did not expect to speak this evening, but after listening to several of the people, a few things came to mind that I'd just like to request that you think about. Earlier this evening, Stephanie Austin and Phyllis Fry both talked about Plan Bay. Plan Bay is a failed regionalism program in San Francisco. The failed Westchester County, which is downstate New York, program that they talked about in greater detail is indicative of what will happen in St. Lucie County and the entire 750 region as we follow it long enough. Now, this last weekend, I was with several thousand people at a summit in Orlando, the Americans for Prosperity, people all over the nation, specializing and talking about property rights, liberty, freedom, local education, that kind of thing. In other words, patriotism. We talked extensively with a gentleman from Iowa. They also had a failed regionalism situation. Started out very similarly to your memorandum of understanding. A very innocuous document. Just says, hey, we're interested in hearing more about this. Let's see what it says. What really happened was, on another level, very similar to what would be our South Florida Regional Planning Council. When it gets to that level, it's yet another document, and there are more agreements, and it starts to become operated strictly by, as you've heard this evening, unelected bureaucrats who will actually take over both county and city government. Now, in summarizing, the NSA, we all know what's happening with the NSA lately, and the President of the United States and the Justice Department say no one any longer has privacy rights in your own home, between man and wife, husband and wife. With the IRS doing what they want to do these days, no penalties, no one has been severely chastised for doing things that are patently illegal and immoral. Drones, who knows what drones are doing these days? And with bipartisan backing, right now President Obama is looking into whether or not we should shoot bombs into Syria. And that's another topic. But my overriding thought is, should we in St. Lucie County really trust unelected bureaucrats to operate this county? I think not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Okay, our last speaker, how are you?
I don't think I'm last.
Well, if you're going to speak, just ask you come over to the wall. We're about ready to wrap up public comment, so thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Peter Bullock. I reside at U.S. Census Tract 3812.04. That's HUD's bullseye for St. Lucie County. You may know it as 3120 North Highway A1A, North Hutchinson Island. Though, because you don't appear to be listening to our concerns about the 750 plan, I'm actually beginning to wonder whether maybe you, like HUD, prefer to view me as residing at Tract 3812.04. I wish to speak to you this evening about the federal government's plan to socially re-engineer North Hutchinson Island, PGA Village, and tradition. What possible transformative power could the federal government hold over these local neighborhoods, you ask? Well, I'm here tonight to tell you, after months of extensive research into the 750 plan, which, by the way, is exclusively funded by a $4.25 million grant from HUD, the American Coalition for Property Rights has finally discovered the HUD's bullseye for St. Lucie County. Precincts 9, 43, and 89, namely North Hutchinson Island, PGA Village, and Tradition. Sad to say, residents of these three communities live in either U.S. Census Tract 3812 or .04 or Census Tract 3821.09. I think some of my thunder was stolen from some of the earlier speakers. That sounds pretty innocuous, doesn't it? Whoever talks about darn, I wish I didn't live in Census Tract 3812.04. Well, tonight I do. I suggest most residents of these three communities are rapidly going to share my sentiment. For months now, Commissioners, we have been speaking with you about how bad this 750 plan is. Tonight, I'm going to show you precisely how oppressive this 750 plan will be for property owners and residents of three large communities right here in St. Lucie County. 750, I'm going to skip past this because it's been talked about. Clearly, I'm sure you understand now that the social equity analysis document prepared by 750 spelled out specifically on page 30 two census tracts that score high on opportunity. Census Tract 3821.09 contains PGA, and I'm quoting from that document, contains PGA Village and Country Club, one of the region's premier golfing destinations. The other tract, 3812.04, covers a barrier island containing 3 state parks, unquote. Clearly, those tracts, those census tracts are, in fact, exactly North Hutchinson Island, and the other tract covers all of PGA Village and Tradition. So the HUD target has been identified. So what does 750 plan to do to those targeted SLC neighborhoods? John Donovan, HUD Secretary, has shed some new light. On July 16, 2013, he stated, quote, "This is a big deal. HUD is enhancing its enforcement techniques by initiating investigations on our own without waiting for individuals to file complaints," unquote. Since the 1960s, it's been illegal for an individual or a realtor to exclude folks from a neighborhood based on race, religion, and ethnicity. Now HUD plans to punish neighborhoods where people live who have worked hard and are successful. The HUD Secretary blames poverty solely on zip code, not on other factors that studies have shown help lead to poverty. Full disclosure, HUD has not yet revealed most details about precisely how they will implement their objective. But in today's current environment, the very last thing I would want to be marked is high opportunity on any U.S. government list. Commissioners, I'm sure you inherently sense that federal meddling into the individual St. Lucie County residents' personal neighborhoods will not be tolerated by people. Please withdraw from 750 now. If you choose not to listen to the people today, I will personally relish watching you attempt to explain your decision regarding 750 to the 9,400 registered voters of Precinct 9, 43, and 89 in your next election. I, along with the army of citizens who have addressed you these past many months now, will be more than willing to explain your 750 decision to these voters. Now I ask you, whom do you believe will have the more convincing argument? It's been my pleasure to address you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Thank you. Good evening.
I'm smiling tonight. Commissioner Zadowski, I hope I'm not scary as I was the last time.
You don't frighten me. You're too nice.
For the record, my name is Judy Culpepper. I reside at 7921 Plantation Lakes Drive in Port St. Lucie. And I'm also going to say and share for the record that I am a former county commissioner. I served 2 terms from 1986 to 1994, and I'm very proud that I was honored with the ability to give that service. And I want to tell you that the reason that I'm here speaking, because I vowed when I walked out of here almost 20 years ago that I would not come back in here and bother the people serving. I lasted 19 years. I think that's pretty darn good for me. And I just have to tell you, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life, or I wouldn't be in here. And I think if you go back into the history of the county, my reputation, while you may not have agreed with me, was one that I did my homework, I knew what I was talking about, and I always was willing to share where I was coming from. And if I didn't agree with you, I would say to you, please, bring me information that I don't already have, and I will certainly entertain it and perhaps change my mind. I was not inflexible. So let me just recap for you, if I could. You've heard tonight about not letting bureaucrats make our decisions, and that makes me want to share one more little county commissioner thing with you. When I first stepped into office, I'll never forget what someone said to me. They looked at me and they said, Judy, so you remember something. Politicians come and go. Bureaucrats are forever. So as long as we've got that down, we've heard about social equity analysis. Pretty frightening and boring thing to read, I might tell you. We've heard about the woes of Westchester, which will be the woes of St. Lucie County. Blueprints about neighborhoods all over the USA, and they are all over the USA. And no, you won't pick that up down there unless you're part of the inner sanctum. But this is going on all over the country, and challenges are cropping up all over the country. And we haven't found one area where people are thrilled about any of their regions. There's 11 of them, you know, 11 of them. They're on a map that's in the presentations you've been given as you're a Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council member. And you will see the 2050 map clearly shows them. You will find that rising sea levels and global warming are part of the basis of this whole affair. You'll find out, and you learn tonight if you didn't already know, that the officials in Indian River County that were familiar with this, that sat on that Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, have not waited forever to get off. They got off in December of 2012, followed by the City of Vero Beach in January of 2013, followed by their school board, and they will be working with Sebastian and Fellsmere soon. You've heard this is all about losing the ways you've chosen to live. And somebody mentioned stakeholders tonight, and I want to point something out to you that I want you to go home and look up when you get a chance. What you're going to notice is the omission, lying through omission again. The omission of the general public and the omission of private property owners as stakeholders in a plan that's all about affecting them. And this is a plan which isn't a plan, because every one of you that I've talked to says, well, we don't know what it's all about yet, Judy. We want to wait and see. You're never going to wait and see, because they're never going to show it to you. And you have to do so much research. You've got to pick from document 1 and go to document 2 and document 3 to tie this whole mess together. It is extraordinarily overwhelming. You heard from oh my gosh, it was all I could do to stay in my seat. When I heard from a constituent here tonight who is reliving the communism she left only to have that nightmare again. I mean, what are we thinking about? About the follies of government planning we heard about. We heard about statistics on our ethnicity and our race. And we talked about the clear challenge of our sovereignty of the United States of America. We're not talking about just us. This is the local implementation of the global plan. It's the local implementation of the global plan. That is what this is all about. Why do people have to argue about what has always been their right? I mean, that's going through our brains too. And 750 is built on lies, and it is the daughter of the UN, and it is part of Agenda 21, and 750 is communism. There's no doubt about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I will sit down. I realize my time is up, but this is what I came to you for tonight. I have a question, just a question, Mr. Chairman. May I ask you a question, and would you agree to answer it for me?
You know, you can ask anything you want.
Does that mean you'll answer me?
You know, I will try my best.
All right. Mr. Mowry, is it yours or any other commissioner's intention to place this item on the agenda, that is, whether or not to withdraw from 750, and if so, when?
Great question. Actually, I asked staff before the meeting tonight if they would help provide us with a timeline and some information on that very issue, so that way we could be able to allow the Commission to more fully know about those aspects.
And so, what time frame do you think that might be, sir?
I don't know. We're going to hear from staff here in just a little bit.
Maybe I count on a phone call from you as to when that might be, when you find out yourself?
You know what? Actually, if you stick around, you may be able to also hear then what goes on tonight. Which is why we always hope that people will stay and listen and encourage. Because I know a lot of times after the public comment, a lot of people vacate and leave and don't stick around to see what happens on your local action as well. So we hope that you would stay engaged in those issues. So what I'd say, as soon as this is over, the public hearing, let's hear from staff and see what discussions may occur or may not occur from that standpoint, and then we can talk.
We just might stick around. Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you.